Hey, everybody, welcome to the program after too long of a break. That was an awesome summer break. I'm so delighted on the Boy Mom podcast, and I'm super thrilled with today's guest to introduce everyone to Kelly Bamm. So she has so many exceptional and unbelievable things to tell us, but I'm going to put those words in her mouth as we were just talking pre-show. We're going to leave it all up to God on this one, and we're just going to let the Holy Spirit flow through us and learn a bunch about Kelly. So Kelly, welcome to the program. Why don't you start with telling us a little bit about you and tell us your family and what makes you a boy mom?
Well, thank you for having me today. Um, there's a lot to unpack. So I guess we're going to go back to somewhat of the beginning and just kind of say that we've got a blended family. And so that brings a lot of challenges and opportunities with it too, as well. Um, and I met my husband after going through a divorce. And so bringing together, we ended up I had three and he had three. And we just knew that we wanted to have more kids together, possibly one, but we ended up having five more boys. So altogether, we have five boys, older boys, our daughter, and then five younger boys. Um, so yes, it's a lot. Um, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Okay, so what do you have in terms of your boys? We got names, ages. How does that all fit together?
Okay, so my oldest is 24 and he is in the Navy. His name is Michael.
Okay, wonderful.
Next, we
Thanks for
have,
serving, Michael. Yeah.
which brings a whole nother aspect to being a boy mom, and especially when they join the military, but we can always come back to that.
Yeah.
Um, Next is Brandon, who is my husband's oldest, and he is also 24. So they are exactly almost 6 months apart.
Okay.
And when we met, they were about 10. Yeah. So then next is Dominic, which is my husband's second oldest. And then he is 21 now, 22. Oh, he's going to hate me for that. Okay. Uh,
That's all right. At least you know what number he is.
And then we have Jacoby, who was my husband's youngest when we met. He had just turned or was just turning 4. And my then next is Ricky, who at the time was my second. And he was just turning 4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they are now 17.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have my daughter, who is 14, turning 15 this year. Then
Wow.
we have Joey, who is 12, turning it'll be 12.
32.
And then
Yep.
then we
Yep.
have Derek, who is turning 11 here in
Okay.
October. And then we have the twins. They're identical twin boys, Corey and Jonathan, and they are 9. And then we rounded off with Liam, who is 7.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, what incredible blessings, right? So what do you I know there's so much to delve in here. I'm not even sure where to start. I mean, I guess when you were since you have a daughter and you have boys, were all your pregnancies with your boys, did you know like when you were going to finally have a girl versus having the boys? Was there anything different you could tell?
Um, Interesting you say that. Looking back now, yes. Um, in my own medical opinion, I
Hmm.
guess, I don't know if I could um carry girls. Uh, it was very interesting. I had a very easy first pregnancy. My second and third, which was a son and a daughter, they were very, very difficult. I had a couple of miscarriages between them.
Hmm.
Nothing that was too far along, but they
Hmm.
were still within the first 2 to 3 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, and so the doctor ended up having to put me on a medication and really watch my levels. And I got something called hyperemesis gravidarium, really bad with both of them. And they actually had to put a PICC line into my chest so that I could carry my daughter. I
Oh,
was
wow.
so dehydrated, lost like 16 pounds with her. Um, it was really, really rough.
It's
So
like the
looking
reverse
back,
way. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So looking back in hindsight, I know that I had started to have it with my son. So I don't know if it was really a boy girl
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
But that was one really big difference. It got really bad with her. And the other thing was I craved mustard. Anything vinegar, I craved with her. So that's what I say was the only thing that was unique.
So, I mean, I think especially in today's culture, I mean, what an amazing thing that you said yes to, to being pregnant that many times and welcoming in that many children. I mean, that's as if you've been pregnant and you've carried a baby, you know what a toll that is on your body. So, I mean, what was your mindset on just like, yeah, we just love each one. Like, let's just keep on going and see what we get.
Yeah, so there I know like and okay, so going back, right, 24 years ago, uh my dad came from a big family, but
Okay.
somewhere I think between that generation and our generation, big families didn't happen, right? Women went into the workforce. And
Hmm.
so having a big family, i- it brings a lot of challenges, right?
Mm.
And so um, looking back when I was younger, I didn't know what those challenges were because they weren't really talked about. I I just knew that I loved my dad's side of the family. We got together. I was one of the youngest cousins. There was 14 of us. I would look up
Yeah.
to my older cousins and watch them. And we got together for a family reunion every year. So that is something that I always held near and dear. And on my mom's side of the family, it was just her and her sister. And I just knew that I always told her from a young age that I wanted to have 5 kids. Where that number came from,
Oh,
I have no idea. I have no idea.
interesting.
It was just something in me. I always told her, and I always told her that I wanted twins. And she always remembers telling me, like, well, you can't decide you want to have twins.
Right, right. It
Um,
doesn't work that way. Right.
right.
Unbelievable. And so you end up having twins.
I
Wow.
ended up
Okay.
having twins. I ended up having more than 5 kids.
Hmm.
But, so physically I did have 8. And, you know, all going back to your statement about your body and what it goes through, we knew on the last one that this was it. For
Hmm.
my health, um, and for any future babies, their health too as well. So Liam, who would have been physically my 8th, but he was number 11 in our lineup,
Hmm.
decided that he was going to make his mark on this world and be completely different, and he got stuck. And he decided
Oh,
he was coming out with a leg and a hand and just kind of all, up in there.
yeah.
And the doctors just couldn't get him free. And then his heart rate started to drop.
Okay.
So watching your husband in the room with you
Yeah.
and his eyes, light up. We had already been through some challenges. In 2015, my husband was blown up and he almost lost his life. So this was again another kind of point in our lives where, we had already been through stuff together. And
Sure.
so, but to see his eyes at the bottom of that bed light up and go, oh my goodness, they have to take him now or they could lose her and him, that
Right.
was, for me on the bed, like I was tough, but I was like, wow, this is let's do what we
Yeah.
got to do. Let's get through this. Um, and just relying on our faith at that point. Um, so yeah, so then Liam came out and he was healthy. But I was like, while you're in there, let's just I had them tie my tubes
Hmm.
because I said at
Hmm.
this point, I didn't really it's such a hot topic with the birth control.
Hmm.
And I just don't believe I've had I did take it when I was younger. I took it
Hmm.
for about a year and a half, and I just feel like, um, that could be a cause a lot of this cancer, and it's really coming out now 20 some years later that these things can, affect us.
Mm,
And looking back in hindsight, I don't think that I should have done that, but I was young. I
mhm,
had just had my oldest son at that point
mhm,
in time. And I really let the outside world kind of affect me. And I really hope, if somebody's watching, and they're grappling with some of these decisions, I just really encourage you to do the research, because we didn't
mm.
really have it back then. It was
That's true. That's a good point.
just
Yeah.
right. It was just coming out. Um,
Well,
so
and to
yeah.
be honest, I mean, I think also, a couple points on that. It's a great point. Thank you for the being candid about that and bringing that topic up, because not only was it not, I think, the research there, but it was just, it wasn't just something you kind of dialogued about, right? And also just all the stuff on hormonal changes and effects, et cetera. Like once you know it and you're like, wow, that is so incredibly impactful, right? And you put that up against all the things that all the mental health, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's all now coming to the forefront about we need to really look at how all these things are intertwined, right? That was very separate. It was like treated somehow separately from everything else. And we know now that it's all intertwined with nutrition and hydration and on and on and on, and very specific to your own body. I was going to just tell you, I've had my own couple of brushes with near death experience. And after I was let's see, my oldest son was probably, oh, I don't even know, maybe 8 weeks old, something like that. He was still in the carrier. And I had eaten, it's finally time for me to like start to eat again. And I remember we had Chinese food, and I went into I had a huge allergic reaction. My husband had to drive me down to the emergency room. It was during the dark of night. There was a thunderstorm happening, right? Like we barely made it. And it was just nick of time. And as I was passing out, right, I'm watching my husband standing against the wall with the baby in the carrier, and that look of fear, same look in his eyes. And all I knew was I cannot leave my husband alone with this baby. So let alone saying like you've got a whole lineup of children. But I was like, my gosh, he is going to kill me if I leave them alone with this baby, right? Like there's something that's that maternal, I call it the mama bear, right? The tiger teacher comes out and you're like, I have got to pull through. This is too much. It's too important. I've got to be there. And some extra human, spiritual strength comes through women, I think, that they're able to be able to kind of push through some of these things. So, on that note, I mean, so okay, so you've got this whole lineup. I mean, you could field your own team of almost any sport with everybody you've got there. I mean, tell me about like how in the world, tell me about the beautiful chaos that was kind of, how'd you keep your house organized, and meaning like the people organized, and how did you, what would you say are kind of your governing principles of motherhood, of keeping all those rambunctious boys, you know, so that they didn't tear down the house?
Well, mm, so
Right.
looking back now, um, again, there wasn't a lot, especially being a young mom. There wasn't a lot of material that was directed towards being a young mom, right? Everything was, um,
It's a good point.
right. So I kind of had to figure it out. I've always been a go-getter. So I was, um, in college, and I just knew that I was going to finish early. I had done a year of college in my senior year of high school. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to let a pregnancy stop me from getting a college degree. I went, got a job, worked, um, because looking back, that's kind of what was at the time really being pushed, was
Yeah.
that you needed to go to college, make something of
Yep.
yourself, be able to support yourself, things like that. And um, it did give me the drive, right? Looking back, hindsight, I wouldn't change anything. I love my son, even though he's so far away from me right now. We will always love our children to the day,
Mm-hmm.
even
Sure.
and beyond. We will still
Mm-hmm.
love them. And so it did give me the drive um, to keep my head out of the weeds, I guess, per se. So looking back though, with not having some of that foundation of what to expect with motherhood and a big family, I kind of had to write it out.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of
Mm-hmm.
had to go. It is a day by day,
Hmm.
thick and thin. You write it, right? And everybody asks me, how do you do it? How do you do it? And my answer to them is by the grace of God,
Yeah.
because by faith, it creates resilience, it creates my strength. So there are pictures, and I know my friend has one where at the time, one of the middle kids, right? And I forgot exactly who it was. I think it might have been one of the twins. They loved peanut butter, and they got a hold of the peanut butter jar, and both their hands are like covered, and I mean covered in peanut butter.
Yep.
Um, one of my other boys loved chocolate syrup, and I refused to buy chocolate syrup. And my husband bought one bottle one day, kept it up high, and he was able to climb up the fridge to get to the top of his
That
chocolate
sounds right.
syrup
That sounds
and
right.
spread it all over the kitchen floor and
Because
fainted
why
with
wouldn't you
it.
do that? Of course you would. Why would
Right?
you not spread it all over the kitchen floor? Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
And
what
you
did you
just
do with?
walk in those moments and you're like, what did you do? Right? But you can't yell because you're still trying to process the fact that how did you make it? First of all,
Right.
I had
Ingenuity,
my
number one,
like,
right?
I had my
Creativity.
eye on you. So how in
Yeah.
the world did you make it in the time that I turned around to grab something to the top of the fridge, down, and managed to squeeze this out onto the floor?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it just, um, yeah, it was
Right. So
a
on
ride.
one hand, you have to be like, you're awestruck because you're like, wow, how did you do that feral creature? Right. Like it's amazing. But on the other hand, you're like, but
Right.
then and then partly I can tell you're this person too. You're probably like, wow, you know what? I give you, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny because and then you're like, you don't want to clean it up. But at the other hand, I mean, you've got this, you just know in the moment, there's a lifetime memory, right? Like you're like, okay, this is gonna be a life lesson. Here's but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And, and I would, looking back too, I would get people would say, "Oh, it's got to be chaotic in your house. Oh, you have so many kids." And I would really take offense. I would get defensive about it. Like, it's
Mm,
not chaos. So that happened, right? Okay. So
mhm,
in the moment, I use it as a teaching moment for my son. Obviously, we're not supposed to do this. There's other
mhm,
things we can do to get this kind of sensory thing out. But you are going to help clean this up. Right.
mhm.
And, you're dealing with what, a 6 year, 5 year old maybe 4 years old at the time. So they don't quite understand. They were just having fun as a boy. They're always looking at using their hands and building and deconstructing. And
Climbing.
so
Yeah.
climbing,
Yeah, climbing.
jumping. So it's like finding the safe way for them to do that,
Yeah.
and so that they can keep learning. That is just the key thing. But so we go through these moments of, oh wow, we weren't supposed to do that, and we move on to the next thing, right? We don't dwell in this place of chaos,
Mhm.
because if I did dwell on that, I would feel very overwhelmed as a mother, very overwhelmed, and just like, what did I do? And it's like, no, like, this is a part of motherhood. This is a part of a big family. Things are going to happen. We move forward. We learn from them because that's a part of growing up too.
Right.
So,
Yeah, for sure. So in actuality, it actually sounds like you actually started thinking like a boy. Because that's a very what is traditionally seen as a male way of thinking, right? Like not dwelling on it, not sitting there and ruminating, not keep having the same conversation going to the next thing, right? In athletics is called next play, right? You don't hold on to the play, you go to the next play and you just play the next play the best of your ability and you just keep on moving, right? I love that. And I do I think that's beautiful. And that's a great way of thinking because I love that you're saying if you had sat there and thought about it too long, plus it's just out of necessity, probably just don't have the time. You're on to the next, whatever's going to happen. But it's you would be overwhelmed. So you're able to stave off that overwhelm between faith and then just moving, keep on moving, and just acceptance, just acceptance. This is part of the, it's part of the package, part of the journey. I think it's a good point. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately for mothers, I do think we as women tend to ruminate too much and go through on and try to blame and on with all of that. And it, one, takes up mental energy, and then two, it doesn't really get you anywhere, right? You usually don't solve anything by doing that. I think it's one of the, that thinking to me is one of the absolute best things I've learned from actually raising boys, because they don't think like that. They're literally moment to moment, right? And they, it's just, it's a thing of beauty. They have a thing of beauty in the way that they think. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and the way they learn too.
Yeah.
Um, because like I said, being part of a big family, we also too, it's easier to, so at the time you have to remember, like, the biggest family you had, like, what, Kate plus 8, you had the
Mhm.
Duggars, the Bates, those were kind of like the TV big families. And they show, it was kind of like Facebook, right? You just see the um polished version. So as a mom in the thick of things, first off, I didn't start by having one and then gradually going into it. We were a blended family. So coming
Mhm.
into this, not only are you dealing with children who you haven't been able to be there from birth with, um, and now you have other parents that you have to co-parent with on
Mhm.
both sides. It was a lot to navigate, but I think that is where we got through it with God's grace. We tried. There were times where we probably all hated each other. There were probably things that looking back we're like, well, maybe we could have done that a little bit better. We could have done that a little bit better. But hey, we did this really great. And so and just again, that next play, right? We moved past it. Now they're into adulthood.
Mhm.
Um, and they get to look back and maybe there are things that they like and didn't like. But so there was that added piece to it. We just didn't get to raise them all. And so there were these different values, different backgrounds. And so that all, and like, so now looking back too, that all plays a role in how the kids are raised up. And it made it difficult, but we got through.
So
And we're still
how
getting
did
through.
how did you, with that whole, with all, with that whole composition you're talking about, with that many time constraints, et cetera, how did you put faith into practice with everyone? What did that look like for your family, and still does, maybe?
It's the little moments. It really is. And really meeting your faith in the moment, in the space wherever you are. Because for boys, we got a lot of pushback, right? They wanted to do their own thing. They're rebellious. They're on to the next thing. We had to work with, and at the time too, some of it is a different way of thinking, whether it's attention deficit, um, if whether it's that just boy mentality, we just really didn't know, and we tried to work through that. And so there were moments where we're like, oh wow, this is hard. Do we put the kids on medication? Do we try to just wait the time? The time between, we had one of our sons was very, very angry. Well, we didn't raise the rest of the kids that way. There was nothing that happened to cause him to be this angry. This was just his type of personality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way that his chemical makeup was, and we were trying to figure that out, and it was rough. um he would have an outburst. We would place him in his room. We would stand there at the door. We would tell him, you're safe, but this is not acceptable. And he would have to, like, I don't want to say pick up and throw something, but he would literally, the best way I could describe it is he would pick his bed up at like 7 years old, pick his bed up, right? Take the mattress off and place it on the floor. And we're standing there. And as a mom, like, you're like, oh my goodness, you're not supposed to be doing this. This is
Mm.
not, and this is not how we raised you. What is going on? And we realized that there was a shift in his testosterone that like we would call him the Hulk, right? He would Hulk
Yeah.
out, and
Yep.
we would have to let him get this physical
Yeah.
workout. So basically, I would just kind of stand at the door and just kind of watch him to make sure he was being safe. And then there were times where I had to get an occupational therapist in to say, okay, what else can we do? Because obviously, him lifting his bed is not what we want, but we got
Mhm.
weighted balls or weighted blankets, or um, we tried to help him
Yeah.
realize what was going on in his body.
Yeah.
And the time from when now to now, we realize, well, maybe public school isn't where he needs to be right now. He needed more personalized learning, hands-on learning, extra time, and he just wasn't getting it in the public school setting. And
Sure.
so we pulled him out to homeschool him, and completely different kid. Completely different kid. And so that time from, 6 to 11, actually it was like more like 10, 11-ish, you know, you got to write it out.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's hard because you're in the thick of it, but you have to meet him in the moment.
Mhm.
And after he would calm down, we talk about it. And we pray about it too, because he needed to know that besides us as parents, there was somebody else listening, right? And that he could get,
Mhm.
talk to about his anger, if even if we, and then that disappointment in himself too, we would kind of see it come out. Like in little kids, it's different. But
Mhm.
wow, I just really screamed at my mom and I felt horrible. You can just see it on their face, and we would talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's just meet them in the moment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One thing that I find in working with with mothers and whatnot is that, well, there's a couple things, but one is that oftentimes these boys are just flat out underfed. They just have not had the right nutritional, stuff. And I think we as women, we forget, it's not our chemistry, it's not our stuff, right? They eat so much more. I see it, especially like they already had girls and now they have a boy, and these boys, especially in those growth years and those spurts and all this stuff, they consume a crazy amount of calories, and then they need to expend those calories. And they're not girls, right? It's a very different thing. So I love that you gave them that space. And then I think boys, they need to have that space. They need that space to have it, to do that. And then you gave him that way to come back. Right. So you didn't turn it on like, you bad boy and you're monster and blah, blah, blah. And so then he's taking in that guilt in, or that shame. That's when boys get that shame. And I think when you don't have that, and I personally believe, this is my personal belief, that females are far more malleable and will kind of come back. And I think boys, if they get broken too young, it's very hard to bring them fully back, right? So that trust factor of being able to and it's kind of like the warrior ethos. You can go out and go to war, and then you come back home to the safe space. You go out, right? And then you come back, but you have to have that place to come back and be accepted and loved. And I love, love, love that you said, hey, aside from us, you've got God to go to and talk about anything, right? And listening, and love is there. What a powerful message that is. That's beautiful.
Yes. And two, they're boys, they're growing up, and that, as a boy mom, I probably messed up on my oldest son, and I
Well, we all
apologize.
experiment on
I
number
know,
one. So
right? Like,
sorry, Jackson. Sorry,
right.
Michael. Right, right. We give us
Like, I
one.
was a
All
young
right. But
mom too. I was
Liam is going to be amazing.
but as moms, I think one of the things we forget, because that our loving nature, and how do I put it? His dad was like, "You're babying him too much."
Mhm.
And it was like, "Well, what do you mean by babying?" Right? It's more of that maternal instinct, love, safe place.
Yep.
And I would really sometimes take that to heart. Like, what do you mean I'm babying him? Now looking back, I wasn't babying him. I was being a mother. But what I don't think was ever taught me to, because I only have a sister, you know,
Hmm.
and now I had a stepbrother and a stepsister. Um, so I wasn't with my stepbrother when he was growing up. You know, I was
Okay.
into my 20s when I got a stepbrother. So I never had that, like, these are boys and these are, I played with Barbies, you know, and
Hmm.
then
Yeah.
and then I got into high school. So like I was really easygoing. I got good grades. I learned
Yep.
easy. And so coming from a place where some of my kids struggle with learning, they all need different ways to learn. But keeping that pathway open for them and understanding, and then kind of circling back around, so for boys, as I'm teaching them or kind of guiding them to learn from other places or avenues such as school or other, you know, family members, you know, and kind of helping them keep that roundabout mindset, because they are going to be men, and they are going to need to understand and have that space. So, like, that space from like 13 to 18, you know, is different. It looks different. And your
Hmm.
first one going through that, you kind of want to hold on to them as much as
Yep.
possible, because it all feels different, weird, you know, like, hey, what is
Yeah.
this? You know, all of a sudden they don't need you. And so, how, as a mom, can you support them differently? And then once they get to be 18, you know, that was kind of the thing. Our oldest were like, "Oh, we're not kids." Well, you're 17, you're still a kid till you're 18. But really, come on. The difference between the day when you turn from 17 to 18, really,
Yeah.
your mind's pretty much the same. You've just got some new responsibilities. So helping them into adulthood to realize that you are a young adult, now things fall on you, but how are
Mm.
we going to help you to be successful in this world? um I actually just had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it's really about getting the boys to be able to survive in this ever changing world. And sometimes it doesn't look like going to college, and
Hmm.
that's okay. You've got to be able to find a skill that you love and do and can do. And even if that's not what you do as a career, it is a skill you will have to be able to support your family. Um, so, for example, you know, our second oldest, he's in the electronics world, loves electronics. When he was little, we always laughed because if we ever needed a wire, he had it.
Hmm.
If
He's
there
the
was a
kid.
loose wire, he would pick it up. He would organize everything. You know, if I need wires organized in my house, I'm calling him. You know,
Yeah. Right.
our a 17-year-old, he's going into welding, and so just watching him grow in that skill and trade, he'll be able to help out his friends and family, you know, with a side gig if he wanted to, or he could go into that as a career. So we're just really trying to encourage them to do what they want to do and not just be forced into something.
So I want to ask you on that one too. And I want to come back to one note of something you said before I forget, because I think it's important. And there's a book called it's kind of a classic on rearing boys called Real Boys that luckily, by the grace of God, my husband and I both read. And I can't believe he read that early, but we read it very early. And it always talks about how, boys are not they're not set up for success in our public school systems, right? They're just and they're not set up for success in the way we are currently teaching them. And there's a ton of research that says that. But that's a great resource for anyone. And it talks about how boys need to have, they need to stand up more often, right? They can't just sit there idly. They need to be interacting and all those things. So I didn't want to be remiss in mentioning that. But I also wanted to ask you, Kelly, because there is so much normative, this is what I call it normative pressure that everybody should be the same way, and like what's wrong with your boy and Medicaid, and on and like all these things. And somehow you've been able to not only give them it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is you're like, hey, you know what, you saw very early that you're there to raise men and they got to go off and be men, right? And that you gave them the tools and the latitude and the space and the support to say, go find out what is going to make you, to be the man that you can be. And I want to ask, like, where did you get that fortitude? Where did that come from to go against other people who are like, what do you mean they're not going, whatever it is, right? And there's a million, and I'm going to say this. I mean, there's pressure from the dads as well. I call it the dad herd. Okay. But
Oh,
the
that's
pressure
good.
between moms, the mom pressure, right? Between all the moms and like pushing down, I think often is I mean, it's hard. It is hard to buck that system and stay and have the courage. So, what do you attribute your ability to do that? And I mean, you did have a posse around you, so you did have volume, you did have numbers, but but how did you do
Well,
it? That mental, the fortitude.
I think I did get sucked into the system. As I would say. So you have to remember 24 years ago, there wasn't autism being pushed or
Mm,
a spectrum. I mean, you knew because, you had heard about it, here and there. Um, so, and I don't know if my oldest is gonna like me saying this now, but he had to struggle. He struggled in school, and he
mm-hmm.
didn't find why do we need to do this? Why do I need to learn this? And I was like, I don't know, but you got to go to school, and I'm going to be in trouble if you don't go to school. So let's go to
Right.
school.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
um, and that I started to kind of buck the system at that point because I noticed, right, those mom red alarms, something's not quite right. He's having a hard time. I don't want to see my kid like this. What is going on? um he has talked to me, part of it too, I was young, and looking back, his I didn't get married with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
uh so I didn't have that manly foundation
Mm,
point for him in the household until he was like 3 or 4 when I met my ex-husband.
mm-hmm.
So looking back, that family unit is so important.
Mm,
Um, Younger me would have been like, "Oh, yeah, like let's do it. I can do everything on my own." But now looking back and realizing, no, he needed a really strong father in the households. Um, that would be first off, because we didn't have that financial stability, I guess. And I so when I met my ex-husband, I like moved, and he's like, "Mom, we moved too much." But I try to remind him there are families that have to move for military, for jobs.
I was gonna say,
It
isn't
is
this the one that went into the
it,
Navy?
yes, it is a part of life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So he's totally
granted,
set to go to the Navy. He's all set. Like
right,
you totally
right,
prepared
but
him. Right. Yeah.
right, but so going back to that time frame, right, there wasn't a lot of research done on, how do you help boys who maybe it was, was he depressed? Was it a
Mm,
learning disability? Was it, you don't really know in that moment. I just knew that my son was trying to struggle and I wanted to get him the help that he needed.
mm-hmm.
But it also, he bucked at it. And I didn't realize kind of why he was bucking. I just knew like, hey, there's just, something. And so what of course, what do we do as moms? We take him to the doctor and we're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I see some red flags. What do I do? And they're like, oh, hey, here's some medication. Let's put him on some medication. And so at that point, I started researching, like, okay, red dyes. That was it wasn't big yet. It
Mm,
was just starting to come out, right? Like that boys with attention deficit, this could affect them. And so I, at that point, started to make sure that he didn't get it, but he was going to get it, right? Whether it was from a family member or at school, it was going to be part of his diet at that point because it wasn't talked about. It wasn't
yeah.
pulled
Yeah.
from shelves. It wasn't, that kind of thing. So as a mom in that instance, it was hard because I didn't want my child to have it, but he's going to end up getting it. So it was more about teaching him, trying to get him to understand there's something different and it's okay. and
Mhm.
it's just the way that your brain is working, and you've got to find a workaround for it. Um, but it made him feel different, right? Like,
Mhm.
hey, there's
Okay.
something that's not good. Right. So that is the moment in my head that I can really pinpoint that I started to realize that I didn't have to go with the flow. And then also to that what
Huh.
you just said, that dad herd, right? So I'm dealing with, his dad who's not living with us, who he didn't want him on medication, but I'm like, "Hey, but the doctors say maybe we should try, and what's it going to hurt if we try?" At the same time, I'm reading, Red 40. So I in my
Yeah.
own head as, young mom, I'm trying to put all this together.
Right.
And
Right.
um I probably made some mistakes in that, but I will tell you that it made me stronger for
Mhm.
then the rest of the children, and being more open and honest with them about, hey, this is what I'm noticing. These, uh, my daughter, had a hard time learning, but getting her to understand uh, was crucial, like, because I may not always be there, right? So you need to be
Sure.
able to ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. Um, and that doesn't make you different. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's choices that we have to make. And that I kind of want to say this, and I know this might be getting off topic, but fundamentally, at the root of everything, we have been given a huge gift, and that was choice. We have been given free will.
Mhm.
And so, as I grew up Catholic. I questioned everything. I didn't learn about this. I mean, I learned about it, but I didn't
Mhm.
put two and two together until I was much older here.
Mhm.
But ultimately, we have that free choice, that free will to choose, and we have to make the choices. If we make a bad choice, we suffer the consequence, but we move on, right?
Yeah.
And we know, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And so I've really taken that into heart, into trying to teach my children that earlier now.
Mhm.
Um, and that they need to be able to speak up and say what they need or don't need. Don't just collapse into yourself and be quiet. One of the things I know with boys, and I've seen this with a lot of my boys, they like to clamor up. They don't want to talk. They don't want to
Yep.
say, I need help. Um, and so it's okay to a certain degree, but then there's times where they need to be able
Mhm.
to talk to as well. And so again, giving that space, and if it's not me you're going to talk to, then you need to talk to God. So
Mhm.
um kind of roundabout.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, so on that note, um, I want to turn into so on that, I was just going to say one quick thing. Isn't it incredible? I find it incredible that if I work a lot with athletes and whatnot, and when you are raising an athletic child and the child is becoming and getting to know themselves as an athlete, it's all about their body, right? And then you get performance through the brain, but like you would take a kid, let's take a football team, and the kid who is built to, let's be a running back versus a wide receiver, et cetera, right? They get to know their body, that they just completely accept all the time that their body might be made differently than somebody else, and this is what they have, the special role, and their body is meant to be like, let's say, a running back, right? And they've got this power, etc. And like everybody accepts it, they don't even question it, that's what they're good at. So and so's 6'9", they're a basketball player, whatever, they play, they play at the net for volleyball. And but we don't have the same thing when it comes to our brains. I find that so fascinating. Like somehow we're still trying to pigeonhole everybody into the same brain, but we all have different brains, just like we have different bodies, right? And they're all wonderfully made. So why not learn your own brain and learn how it works for you, right? And not try to say like that's wrong or whatever. That's it. That's how your brain is made. And let's find out what is going to work the best for your brain. I always find it incredible that somehow we've had such a disconnect again from the brain and body, right? And I think we're starting to put it more together, but my gosh, we still haven't cut, we're still back to Herodotus with the stomach, right? And like being the root of your immune system and having the right probiotics and whatnot. I mean, it's crazy how disconnected sometimes we are. But on that note, I want to go back and I want to talk about you and I want to talk about your health and a pivotal piece of your family life and how what that looks like now. So please.
So, I do have a long medical history here since 2022. I was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive cancer called small cell neuroendocrine cancer. And it it can take I found a great support system, so we'll come back to that. But in this support system, I have seen this cancer take women very quickly, very quickly. Um, when I was first diagnosed, and of course, as moms, right? And now that we are encouraged to research and things, of course, I call it my Google MD, right? Went out
Mhm.
there, don't do it, don't
Yep.
do it. um, my chances of survival were not very good within the first year. Um, and now looking back to everything that I went through in 2022, it was survival mode, complete survival mode. And it was also living in the moment. Nothing else mattered besides my children, my husband, my
Mhm.
family, and just making it through the day and being blessed the next morning and thanking God for giving me another day on earth is really ultimately what it came and still comes down to every day.
Yeah.
Um, but with that, there's a lot that goes into now as a mother being diagnosed with this rare and aggressive cancer. We don't know what the future is going to look like, and we still have very young children. Um, I'm glad to say that, I had a reoccurrence. So basically, they found it. We kind of caught it early, had no symptoms whatsoever. Um, Actually, I really credit my son's teacher. He needed his physicals for the year, and I ended up scheduling everybody's physicals, and mine, I do them around their birthdays, was August. So I just was like, okay, I'm going to get my pap smear done in August, scheduled it and forgot about it. I then started to have a little bit of discomfort, no pain, nothing, nothing really out of the ordinary. It just felt like something was still stuck in there, And so I really listened to it, listened to, I want to say God, really, like the
Mhm.
angels, I don't know, but
Mhm.
that little voice in your head that just says you need to move this up. And that's something I really pivotal even with the boy mom, right? Like you need to listen to your voice because it is, I don't know, it's just something that you need to be able to, because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be right. Right,
Yeah.
like there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so I listened to it. I called in and said, hey, do you have any cancellations? And I kept doing that. I moved up to March. Then I got it moved up to February. And that is when they called it was February 22. And so I did 3 rounds of chemo. I did some overall radiation. And then I had a scan, which was that end of that June 22. And they were like, no evidence of disease. And we're like, wow, did we really beat this? Like, this is amazing. But again, going back to that research, it was just like, no, and understanding and listening to our bodies and nutrition, we'll get into all of that too, but that has been a key piece in where I'm at today. Because I started to listen to my body. I prayed every day. And I did. I told God, I said, if I make it through this, I want to use my voice. That's all I've got left.
Mhm.
The chemo drugs do so much damage. I had no hair. My skin has changed. I mean, granted, yes, I hit 40. At that time, I was only, I want to say it was like 38,
Mm.
30, maybe just turning 39 that year. Um, yeah, because I had on my, yeah. So anyways, but, it was just a kind of that a saving grace moment when death is put right in front of your face. Um, Very humbling.
Yeah.
There are some people who don't get that chance. And
Yeah. Or recognize
um,
the chance. How about that? Recognize the gift that you were really given there, that absolute pure clarity of actually what's important and how much is not important.
Absolutely. And being able to listen to this voice like, hey, this isn't right in my body. Something, and then being your own voice and your own
Mm,
advocate. Um, I actually went to the doctor, and at first they were like, oh, it could just be some side effects from the medication. Chemo does, you know, so much damage. I was, typically you get 6 rounds. They had done 3 rounds. It had shrank enough below the threshold. She's like, I'm going in and I'm taking it out. And it all makes sense now, but even there were cells that were left over, and
mhm,
they metastasized to my sternum and 5
mm,
places in my spine. And it wasn't just, oh, this, but I went back and said, no, I think something's wrong, really wrong. I shouldn't be having this much pain. And especially since it was cervical cancer, this is up in my spine and my sternum.
mhm,
Like, this just isn't right. And yeah, so they found it and did more radiation. And then after doing that, they said, wow, this is pretty far up your spine. Let's get a scan and of your head. And they found a tumor in my cerebellum.
mm,
And so from there, they radiated it, and they basically told me, this is it, get your life in order.
mm.
And I laugh, I chuckle, because sometimes laughter is the only way to get through things. Beside
Sure.
faith and laughter, positivity, finding the smallest grace in the day is how you're going to get through, right? That
Yeah.
resilience. Faith equals resilience. Um, and I looked at my doctor and I said, you can't tell a mom of 11 to get her life in order. I'm going to need some years for that, please.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Right.
like,
Exactly. That is not
and
on the docket for today. We don't have time for that today. Right. Like, no,
right,
we're not doing this. Yeah. I'm not ready. Right. You got stuff
right,
to do. Yes. You got a list or stuff to do. Yeah.
right. And ultimately, I knew it was up to God.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
but again, going back to that free choice, I was sitting outside of the hospital after I had chemo, really nauseous. Um, but wow, what a gift. Uh, God creates miracles, but uh we also have to put the hard work in. A doctor
mm.
was given the gift and the ability to be able to have the mind to be able to go to school. They put that hard work in. She
Yeah.
was able to use some of what we're learning in science, which can be a good thing too. It can also be used for evil too. So there,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
but she was able to think outside of the box, to understand where I came from, a faith-based, to work with that. And say, okay, well, we've got to move, and we got to move now. And then, so to make those choices and be given that gift, and to go into that profession, um, that was free will. She had those choices to make. And I'm so, thankful for that. And so I'm sitting outside of this doctor's office thinking, wow, I've been given this gift of these medical professionals, um, to be able to try to do this. Um, and so it's that moral push and pull, but is this really what God wants? Does he want me to, is this my time? If this is my time, why am I trying to elongate it? And so all those things kind of go
Yeah.
through
Mm,
your head. And I'm sitting there, and there was a guy that came out, and we started to make small talk, and he had throat cancer, just got his round of radiation. And he lights up a cigarette.
oh,
And I just thought, wow, we've been given this gift to
yeah.
try to elongate our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt God's presence, like, you have a choice, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, screw it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to live whatever and do whatever, because my time is up.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Or I can say, no, I really do find the smallest miracles in nature. And Earth is absolutely beautiful. And I want to stay for a little bit longer, but I have those choices. That
Mm-hmm.
is what God gave me, that free will to,
Mm,
to decide. And
yeah.
in that moment, I said, I need to research and really look at, what is cancer? What is it doing to my body? And what can I do to help God perform miracle? Is really what it came down to. And so I started researching cellular activity, And uh, one of the other key pieces to all of this at this moment was my husband being blown up. Right, he was in the ICU for about 2 to 3 weeks, and the nurses would come in with these huge milkshakes, and I was like, "Why are you guys keep giving him milkshakes?" It was filled with protein, 60 grams in one milkshake, and
Mm,
they would feed it to him 3 or 4 times, 5 times, like anytime he wanted one, they would give it to him. And I said, "Well, why?" And they said, "Well, burn victims need a lot of protein to help their skin heal." And I really took that to heart. And I thought, wow. And my sister was really big into the keto diet too.
mm-hmm,
And so I really just started researching and said, okay, I need to, if I'm going to try to help my body fight this, I got to keep it in as much tip top shape as possible, and show God that I want to be here and that,
mm-hmm.
we're going to fight.
Right.
We're going to
We're
fight.
partners here. Yeah.
Mhm. And so, I did. I increased my nutritional intake. I started doing hot water therapy, red light therapy. I started walking. That was a couple things I was told in the beginning. Keep moving.
Yeah.
Um, keep eating because you're not going to want to eat during chemo. So just whatever nutrition you can get in you, and to keep your faith and find the small positive in every single day to keep you moving. And so, um, yeah, that's where I'm at. My cancer right now is they were able to go in, and then on my 40th birthday in 2023, August, they were able to remove the tumor because it started to swell from the radiation and caused my brain or my cerebellum to push on my brainstem. And they had to go in immediately and remove it. Um, and so very, very blessed that that was able to come out. But, I still have the cancer that was on my spine and my sternum that was radiated. And so they've just told me that it's sleeping. And so that when they found the brain tumor and they were basically like, get your life in order, besides the nutritional standpoint, which absolutely hands down. In my worst days, like I take milk thistle to help flush my liver.
Mm-hmm.
I've just really researched a lot of that. And but again, too, trusting science too to a certain degree is what am I going to do and not going to do? And at the time, stem cell was out of the question. I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. But there was another drug that they decided they were going to try on me. And I found it fascinating on how it worked. And so it basically took my own immune cells and gave it instructions. And I joked with my husband. I said, well, then my cells better be female cells to read the instructions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. See, the humor comes in. Yep.
Right. And then basically then the next drug then once they're given the instructions beefs them up. So it's kind of like Popeye. Think back to when he would eat
Mm-hmm.
the spinach and grow the
Yep.
muscles and then go out and be able to hit, like so my cells can grow big and strong and then go out and kill these cancer
The bad
cells.
ones. Yeah. Right.
Mhm. And so again, that brings me back to the nutrition standpoint. Our bodies are huge miracles,
Mm.
so intricately designed that if we just listen, then we might be able to help our bodies. And if my time is my time and my cancer, takes me, it takes me. But I do know that with God's grace, I've been able to stay resilient, to stay, you know, strong for my children. And partly my children have been there for me and have
I
kept
was going
me
to say,
strong
yeah.
because they keep me moving, right? I
Sure.
can't just lay in bed and feel sorry for myself. I have to
Yeah.
get up. Somebody needs this. Somebody's got to go to
Yep.
football.
Yep.
Somebody's got. And so I just I just do it, you just go on to the next play.
Yeah, that's probably a great way to do that. And I mean, what an incredible, shining light you are to your sons and to your daughter and husband. But it's to your point. it's incredible. It's a miracle, right? And so you're doing all your pieces too to help, row that boat in the right direction. But I gotta think that you've got that Holy Spirit just all through all your cells and everything is working. And everybody's like, you're doing this. Like you're there's for a reason, right? I saw after Hurricane Katrina many years ago, I was at a conference and one of the keynote speakers, it was the conference was down in New Orleans, and the keynote speaker was not anybody illustrious. It was just this guy who was a shoe shiner, who was a shoe shiner during Hurricane Katrina. And he was very old. He was in his 80s. And every morning he would ride his bike down to the shoe shine place and in Canal Street down in the district. And he would come in and his whole thing, his entire speech was he'd wake up in the morning, he'd put his feet on the floor and say, God, I guess you gave me another day. You want me to do something. So I'm going to get on my feet and I'm going to go do it. Right. And he talked about how that just simple idea of here's another day. You didn't want to take me. So I've got stuff to do, and get on with it has always stuck with me. And that just, it sounds very much like you. I mean, what a blessing that you're here to share all that with us. Thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, just in kind of wrapping up then, Kelly, what would you say? I mean, all the stuff that you've done, et cetera. I love that you said laughter and you brought out that moment of levity there with your husband, because I do think one that's the key to marriage too, is you have to have humor. But this, as in being the boy mom, what do you think is the greatest? It could be top three things. The biggest thing you've learned as being a boy mom. What have they given back to you?
Well, first off, looking back, the past doesn't define you, right? You have a choice from this moment. So if you're sitting there and you're like, I messed up and I didn't do this, or okay, fine. But moving forward, you can change that,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's where I come from. I try to every day as a parent. There's some days where I raise my voice, and everybody's like, Kelly, we've never heard you raise it. Oh, there's days where I've raised my voice, and do I regret it? Sometimes, yes. And but it doesn't define you, right? So you can move forward from that and say, okay, maybe I didn't do as much Bible study with my kids on this day or that, or I didn't get them into this sport, or I didn't teach them about this, right? Okay, but you're at where you're at, so move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if your faith isn't as strong as you'd like it to be, start with baby steps, you know, um, and just get a personal relationship. It doesn't have to look all fancy and polished. Meet in the moment, you know. Um, and then really too, growing with boys, it's going to be a roller coaster. Enjoy it. It goes fast. Uh, and really too, as they get older, they teach me new things. So be willing to be taught too
Mm-hmm.
from them. It's key piece.
Yeah, I'd say that I the litmus test that I like to use, I think this is boys can get things to be so simple and just clarify things so quickly. So if you ask a teen boy and you tell them your whole, the mom's good, blah, 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 and all you're on this whole diatribe of this whole complex situation and on, and you're like all your reasons why you can't do something. And like 9 times out of 10, boys will just sit there and listen to you, and then they just go, so it's just the best answer, right? Because they're like, so now what, right? And it's just they just have the ability to put it down. And you're like, yeah, that's a good point, right? Like, there's what
Right.
else? Like get on with it. Like, what are you doing now? Like, okay, so who cares, right? Or they'll give you the infamous like, well, who cares? Why do you care? Like all the time, why do you care? And you're like, you know
Yeah.
what? Gosh, that little moment of clarity, I needed that kid.
Well,
So,
and I learned from it. So I try not to be I can be wordy. I can talk. I got the extrovertedness for my father. I can, but what I've learned is boys don't always want to hear it all. And so the next time then I'm straight to the point. They
mhm.
want to know the why. They want to know how is this going to benefit them. And so I give it to them straight up before they have time to even ask the why question.
Oh, that's probably a key, right? That's a huge key to your relationship right there. Yeah, right. That's probably why you've been so successful because, yeah, you don't have a lot of superfluous information coming at them, right? They don't need all the color commentary, just the facts, ma'am, right? It's very true. 100%. Okay, well, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thanks for coming and sharing your story. And we'd love to have you back and hear how things are going. And, from all of us, just keep that health and happiness going. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see where this takes me. This is, something new to me too. And using my voice, I've taught my
Yeah.
boys how to try to use theirs. I'm like, wait, but now I really need to use my voice. If I can save one person. So, women, if you're out there and you haven't been taking care of your health, go
Mm.
get a pap smear, go see your doctor, but use your voice to understand what's going on in your own body. If I can just save one person, if I can help one young mom think, oh, well, I want to have a big family, and start looking into maybe what they need to put into place now to have that big family. If I can just help one person, then this is all worth it.
Oh, amen. Amen. Thanks again, Kelly.
Thank you.